Let me tell you about the most interesting people on social media. They're the ones you'll never find. They're there, scrolling through your vacation photos at 11 p.m. They saw your birthday post. They know about your new job, your breakup, that embarrassing thing you shared and deleted 10 minutes later. They're witnesses to your entire digital life. But if you were to visit their profile, you'd find nothing. A barren landscape, a digital desert with maybe one photo from 2017 and a profile picture that could be anyone. These are the ghosts of the internet age, the silent observers, the people who see everything but reveal nothing. And the question that haunts everyone who discovers them is simple. What are they hiding? But here's where it gets interesting. What if they're not hiding anything at all? What if they've discovered something the rest of us are still too busy performing to notice? In psychology, Carl Jung once wrote about the persona, the mask we show the world, and the shadow, the parts of ourselves we conceal. Social media in many ways has become a theater of personas. We curate, polish and project the parts of ourselves that feel acceptable, digestible and admirable. But the shadow doesn't disappear just because it's unposted. It waits beneath the filter, patient and alive. Every scroll through a perfect feed is a confrontation between our persona and our shadow, the curated image and the quiet truth. The silent observers, the ones who don't post, might be those who have grown tired of the mask. They've seen the endless play of personas and recognized themselves in the shadows instead. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires us to acknowledge and integrate the shadow, not hide it. Maybe the ones who step back from digital life are, consciously or not, beginning that process. They're not running from the world. They're reclaiming the parts of themselves that don't fit neatly into a feed. There's a kind of spiritual maturity in their silence, a refusal to outsource identity to the collective validation machine. Jung might say they've turned inward, toward the self rather than the persona. And in a world that constantly rewards performance, that turn inward is a quiet act of rebellion. It's not antisocial, it's deeply human. It's the digital age's rarest achievement, the courage to exist unobserved. So perhaps these non-posters are not ghosts at all. Perhaps they are the alchemists of our time, transforming the noise of attention into the gold of introspection. In a culture obsessed with expression, their restraint is its own kind of wisdom. The wisdom of knowing that what is unseen can still be real, and that wholeness often begins in silence. Picture this. A woman sits in a cafe watching a young couple at the next table. They're on what appears to be a wonderful date, laughing, leaning in close. But every few minutes, they pause, arrange themselves. The phone comes out, 3, 4, 5 attempts to capture the perfect angle. The moment dies, then resurrects itself for the camera, then dies again. The woman watches this dance and thinks about something her grandson told her. "Grandma, if you didn't post it, did it even happen?" She looks at the couple, now reviewing their photos instead of looking at each other, and thinks, maybe the better question is, if you posted it, did you actually experience it? This is the paradox of our age. We've become so obsessed with capturing life that we've forgotten how to live it. And the people who don't post, they're the ones who've remembered. But it's not that simple. It never is with human beings. Let's talk about the different creatures who inhabit the shadows of social media. because they're as varied as any species. First, there's the philosophical abstainer. This person has looked at the entire machinery of social media, understood exactly what it's designed to do, and said no thank you. Not out of fear or judgment, but from a deep understanding that the game isn't worth playing. These people have usually read a few books, thought a few thoughts, and arrived at an uncomfortable truth. Social media is designed to addict you. Every feature, every notification, every little red dot is engineered to keep you coming back. It's a slot machine disguised as a community, and once you see the mechanics, it's hard to pull the lever anymore. They're not superior about it. They don't lecture their friends. They simply opt out the way you might politely decline dessert when you're already full. They've had enough of the noise, and they're perfectly content in the quiet. Then there's the burned-out refugee. This person used to be in the game. They posted, they shared. They performed their life with enthusiasm, until one day something broke. Maybe they posted something vulnerable and got silence. Maybe they watched everyone's life look perfect while theirs fell apart. Maybe they just woke up one morning and realized they were exhausted from maintaining a persona that wasn't quite real. So they walked away, not dramatically, not with a farewell post. They just slowly faded from the feed like a photograph left in the sun. And here's the thing, most people didn't even notice, because everyone's too busy broadcasting their own lives to pay attention to who's stopped broadcasting theirs. Then there's the terrified perfectionist. This person writes posts they never publish. They take photos they never share. They have thoughts and experiences and moments of beauty, but they're paralyzed by an impossible standard. What if it's not interesting enough? What if people judge them? What if they post something and hear nothing back but the echo of their own inadequacy? So they watch from the safety of invisibility, longing to participate, but convinced they have nothing worth contributing. They don't realize that their silence isn't protecting them, it's imprisoning them. Now here's where the psychology gets fascinating. When you post something online and receive validation, likes, comments, hearts, your brain releases dopamine. It's the same chemical involved in every addiction humans have ever developed. Your brain learns to crave that feedback. It starts to need it. But the people who don't post, they've either never developed that dependency or they've broken free from it. And breaking free from a dopamine loop is no small feat. It requires the kind of self-awareness most people never develop. Think about what happens when someone stops seeking external validation. Their sense of self stops being a democracy where everyone gets a vote. They begin to know who they are from the inside out, not from the outside in. They do things because they want to do them, not because they'll make impressive content. This is rare, genuinely rare. Most people's sense of identity is now at least partially crowdsourced. We check the comments to see if we're funny. We count the likes to see if we're attractive. We measure our experiences by how they're received, not by how they're lived. The person who doesn't post has stepped outside that system entirely. They've remembered something the rest of us forgot. That they existed before anyone was watching, and they'll continue to exist whether anyone's watching or not. But let me tell you a story that illustrates the cost of visibility, because it's not all enlightenment and freedom. There was a man who documented everything, every meal, every sunset, every thought. His feed was a meticulous record of his existence. Then his wife died suddenly. And in his grief, he did what he'd always done. He posted about it. The comments flooded in, condolences, prayers, heart emojis. Hundreds of people he barely knew performing their sympathy in public. And he realized something devastating. He wasn't grieving anymore. He was managing his grief's public relations. He was performing sorrow for an audience. So he stopped. He deleted the apps. He disappeared. 6 months later, a friend asked him how he was doing, and he said something remarkable. "I don't know how to explain this, but I had to grieve in private before I could grieve honestly. When everyone was watching, I was too busy being a widower to actually be a man who'd lost his wife." This is what the people who don't post understand, sometimes consciously, sometimes instinctively. There are experiences too sacred to be shared, moments too true to be translated into content, feelings too deep to be flattened into captions. Not everything is meant for an audience. Some things are meant to be lived in the fullness of their privacy, witnessed only by the people who were actually there, held in the sanctity of direct human connection. Here's something else the silent observers have figured out. The difference between loneliness and solitude, between being forgotten and being free from obligation. When you don't post, yes, some people forget about you. They don't see you in their feed, so you don't exist in their awareness. But here's the question worth asking. Were those people actually connected to you, or were they just connected to your content? The people who really matter, the ones who actually care, they reach out. They call. They text. They remember you exist without needing reminders in their feed. And when you realize that most of your social media connections were never real connections at all, the loss stops feeling like loss. It starts feeling like liberation from performing for strangers. The silent observer has often discovered that 3 deep friendships nourish the soul more than 300 shallow connections. That being truly known by a few beats being vaguely recognized by many, that real intimacy requires privacy, vulnerability, and time, none of which thrive in public spaces. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Some people who don't post are genuinely missing out. They're so afraid of judgment that they've built walls instead of boundaries. They're so protective of their privacy that they've isolated themselves. They want to connect, but don't know how anymore, because digital connection is the language of this age, and they've refused to learn it. If you're someone who never posts and it feels like freedom, carry on. But if it feels like fear, that's different. That's worth examining. Because hiding isn't the same as choosing privacy. Running away isn't the same as walking toward something better. The goal isn't to post or not post. The goal is to live consciously, to know why you do what you do, to choose your relationship with visibility rather than defaulting to silence out of fear or habit. Here's what strikes me most about the people who don't share their lives online. They're not empty or disconnected. Often they're the opposite. They're so full that they don't need to pour themselves out into public spaces. They're so connected to themselves that they don't need constant connection to others to know they're real. They've remembered something essential, that being seen and being known are not the same thing, that visibility and value are not synonyms, that you can live a profoundly meaningful life that leaves almost no digital trace. They're walking proof that life existed before social media and will continue after it. that humans connected deeply for millennia without posting about it. That meaning doesn't require an audience, and experiences don't need documentation to be valid. So the next time you encounter someone who never posts, don't assume they're hiding or judging, or somehow less engaged with life. Consider the possibility that they're more engaged than you've ever been. That they're experiencing moments so fully they don't think to capture them. That they're living in such rich privacy that public display would only diminish what they have. They're not the ghosts of the digital age, they're the people who've remembered how to be fully alive in a world that keeps asking us to be content. And maybe, just maybe, they're the ones who've figured out what the rest of us are still too distracted to see. That being unseen doesn't mean being insignificant. That silence isn't emptiness. And that the truest version of yourself might be the one that exists only in the spaces between screens, in the moments no one's watching, in the life you live when the cameras are finally off. If this resonated with you, whether you're a silent observer or someone who shares everything, I invite you to subscribe and continue this exploration of human behavior in the digital age. Leave a comment below telling me which type of non-poster you recognize in yourself or in someone you know. Are you the philosophical abstainer, the burned-out refugee, or the terrified perfectionist? Your perspective matters, and there are others here who will recognize themselves in your story. Let's keep this conversation going, even if it's the only place some of you choose to be visible.